The Things We All Carry is a podcast about first responders and their stories surrounding trauma on the job. The intention of this podcast is to raise awareness and share meaningful conversation around a subject often viewed as taboo or simply ignored. Be aware this content may be graphic and it is real. It may not be suitable for children or adults triggered by this subject matter.
Welcome back to The Things We All Carry. This is a weird introduction for me. I spent the weekend with my sisters, and it was coming up on the last of these first, actually, which is kind of refreshing. It was the first, their birthday. One sister's birthday was on Friday, and then another one, my other sister's, is next weekend. So we did kind of a combination birthday dinner celebration. And it was somber and low-key, but it was also happy and good times. We spent time talking about my mom and reminiscing and just plain missing. One of the things I discovered, is that I haven't dealt with it at all. And it was reaffirmed this weekend when I say that, in my house, when I can walk around and where I can put stuff, I can minimize the memories, if that makes sense. What I'm saying by that is there's no memory of her there. There's no, other than what I have in my head, there's no physical memory of her except for a couple of things I don't see very often. When I go to my sister's house, there's physical memories of her everywhere. Pictures, furniture, the room where her hospice bed was, where she passed away. So I was pretty anxious going there. Because I haven't, in typical fashion, I haven't done a good job of staying in contact. And I'm ashamed of that, And I know people are going to beat me up for saying that, but it's true. I am ashamed that I haven't kept in touch. And it's not that I don't love my family. It's not that I don't want to be around my sisters. It's that I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to grieve. I still don't. So I've had some enlightening moments over the last few weeks that some are really positive, some are devastating. And we're coming to, this is kind of I think that when my mom died, I look forward to this chaos of my life subsiding a little. Like, it would slow down. I would find my peace. I would find that calm that I keep talking about. And I'm searching. In some manners, I'm still searching. And a few things that came to light for me this weekend or in the last couple of weeks is I have to work on me. I have to do a lot of serious work on me. I have to be responsible for this grief. I have to find a way to work with it and through it, sit in it and move through it and let it move through me. I have to find a way to go back to therapy and be open and honest. Because I'm here and I'm telling you right now, I was not completely open in therapy. It is, for me, is very hard to find that trust. And I didn't share as much as I should have, and probably have new information in my head that I've learned over the last couple of days that I need to work out. I have this weird thing that the majority of my childhood isn't available to me. I don't have memories of the majority of my childhood, and I have questions as to why. And those questions, I'm not sure when I'll get them answered, because I gotta get up the guts to delve into it. It might be nothing, but it might be something. I don't know, but I'm very worried about it. And the only reason I'm telling you this is because I have said it so many times on the show. I'm a flawed individual. I'm learning. I'm trying to grow. I'm trying to get better. And I'm right back there. I'm smack dab in that spot. I'm trying to get better. I'm going to try and grow. I'm going to try and learn about myself. And try to learn about these aspects that I need to take care of. You know, I have said it before, I've hurt people, and I regret that. I regret it immensely. And I hold on to the guilt and the shame, and I need to find a way to work through it and let it go. I need to find a way to make amends with some of this. Even if it's for myself or whatever, I need to find a way to let it go and let it stop affecting me. So the only reason I'm telling you this is my tagline is just fucking talk, right? So I need to just fucking talk, but I need to just fucking talk about everything. And I need to find that right person, that right therapist who's going to sit, listen, and work through it with me. And it might take time, but I can tell you this, I will promise you that that is what's going to happen. So it's been a rough week. It's been an enlightening week. It's been, we had celebration with my sisters, and that was nice, but we also had some deep conversation, and it was hard. And I'm kind of reeling, and I had to get this show out earlier than normal because I have a trip tomorrow morning. So I think I'm going to leave the intro there. I think that there's no profound thoughts. There's no aha moments. There's just me. Bye. Like I said, there's just me. This flawed individual trying to do the best I can with this knowledge that I have. And sometimes it's 2 steps back, 1 step forward. And I'm just learning to be a better me. And I owe that to myself and everyone around me. And that is an understatement. Welcome to episode 137 of The Things We All Carry. Today I have Josh out of Arizona, and Josh is founder and owner and operator of Foundation Fortified. Foundation Fortified is a company that it's mindfulness. That's what he does. He teaches mindfulness, and he puts these lessons out on YouTube, on his YouTube channel for first responders, military, veterans, whatever it is. You can go there and you can find these lessons. They're for free, and they're geared towards us. And Josh he's been a firefighter for over 15 years. He's been doing meditation and mindfulness for, I think, 10 plus, if I recall correctly. And so he came on the show. He's trying to get his product out there. He's trying to get his face and this tool out there. And the wonderful thing about this is that he's combined his knowledge of being a first responder with his knowledge of mindfulness. And he's put this package together for us to benefit from it. And this is a wonderful tool to put in your arsenal, put in your toolbox to use to help you minimize some of these reactions to the world around you and to those calls and to the chaos in your life, in and out of the job. So this conversation was very interesting because it's a subject I haven't delved too far into, but give it a listen. Maybe give his videos a try on YouTube. Go follow him on Instagram. He's Foundation Fortified, and see what you think. Reach out to Josh. Tell him what you think about the program. Reach out to me and tell me what you think about the show. And give me those tips. Give me the criticisms, the pluses, the minuses. Let me hear all of it. So find me. I'm easy to find on Instagram, TikTok, email, whatever it is. Go out there and find me. Let me know what you think about the show. And then you guys get outside and do something for yourself. All right. Well, here we go. Let me go back to that website so I can see what I'm going to say. Welcome back to The Things We All Carry. Today, I have Josh Grandinetti with me. And Josh, again, I asked you if I pronounced it right. Hopefully I did it justice that time as well. Josh is a fire captain out of Phoenix. You've been a captain for 5 years, correct, Josh?
5 years, yeah, going on 5 years now.
And I'm reading your bio kind of off your website. And so firefighter for 15, captain for 5. What is CEP?
Certified emergency paramedic.
Okay. It's that for some reason I couldn't figure it out. I should have. So you've been a paramedic for 12 years. And then You've also, now what your focus is, not that you're not a firefighter now, but what you've kind of turned your focus towards is mindfulness and meditation, correct?
That's correct.
And so you're an instructor in both. Well, I guess would you say they're the same thing? Mindfulness is a meditation, right?
Yes. It's an important distinction that people may or may not be familiar with. Okay. Meditation has been around for what, 2,500 years. And it's been captured and taught by a lot of great thinkers and a lot of great people throughout the ages, but there is a religious dogmatism that tends to come full force when anybody tries to enter this domain, right? And mindfulness is just the West's attempt. There have been some college educated people that have gone and studied mindfulness practice, tried to pull from what's valuable from the practice and what is actually scientifically defensible for what's valuable. It's like the baby in the bathwater, right?
Yeah, no, I get
Trying
it.
to stick baby in the bathwater. And so that's what mindfulness, that's the term coined to try to capture what we're doing here. So mindfulness meditation, mindfulness, more or less the same thing.
So what your background is in mindfulness is, what's IMMA? I've obviously, it's a licensure board for mindfulness, but what does it exactly stand for?
The International Mindfulness Meditation Association.
Okay. So you're certified mindfulness meditation instructor and certified trauma sensitive mindfulness instructor, which is very important for the genre and the audience that you have.
Correct.
And then real quick, I want to read your mission statement because I think it's important so the audience knows what you guys are about. And is it just you behind the company, or do you have more people with you?
There's almost nothing that I do without the help of my wife.
Yeah, there you go.
All this setup is due to the loving help of my wife. But it is just her and I. We're hoping in the future that if we can produce something that's valuable, we can bring on more and, have different kinds of teachers to the product as well. But for now, yes, it is just me and my wife.
It's funny you mentioned your setup, that it's all because of your wife, and this fancy little sign I have behind me I threw it up. I was like, oh shit, I have that. Let me throw that backdrop up. This is the first time I've used it. I've had it for about two or 3 weeks now. So I'm happy to finally have it up and using it.
That's great.
So let me read that mission statement real quick, and then we'll start our conversation a little more in depth. And so mindfulness training designed for first responders is what you do. And the mission statement is to bring our developing understanding of mindfulness practice to first responders, centered around the unique challenges they face on and off duty. And I love that you put in off duty, because that's a big piece of what I talk about. Is there's so much off duty that I like to say that we deal with, but we actually don't deal with it. And it compounds with the on duty stuff. So I'm happy to see that you have both of them in there.
Well, yeah, the on and off duty. I mean, we can talk about the stresses on duty, and there's a massive space for mindfulness meditation and in how our actual training for the job lends itself very well to understanding the project of mindfulness. Okay. So firefighters, police, dispatchers, EMS, we all have an advantage in this area, but the things we see and the things we deal with and this form of suffering that we all kind of cope with, right? That's something that's harder to get through in mindfulness practice. And I feel like that's where many instructors couldn't help me throughout my personal journey, as I've been meditating for 10 years, just as a personal journey. Right. Mm-hmm. But within the first year or two, I began writing this curriculum. We need this practice. And, I remember I first sat in a session and there was a gong, right? And I would hear the gong and I would jump, I would jump in a way that other people wouldn't. And it just, then no more than a year or so later, we're getting training on heart saber tones and all these things that are trying to help with our reaction there. And when you're sitting in mindfulness meditation and you hear a bell and you can just notice how your body is responding without having to get up and respond to responding, right, that can be very beneficial for calming yourself down prior to dispatch, prior to the need to respond within that first half second. Being able to calm yourself and move forward is a skill that was valuable. And that's just one small area that I've been able to see how mindfulness can help us in our careers. But the off-duty stresses for our wives, our families, picking up our personal lives, trying to organize our families and our personal lives in a way that will allow us to go back to our duties. That's another struggle. And Foundation Fortified is extremely committed to the supporters of first responders as well. I have a few meditations already out there, one for children and one for supporters, wives or husbands, depending. And we just want to make sure we're fully encapsulating mindfulness practice for first responders in any way that we can.
So perfect. Before we get too far in depth, because I know when you and I spoke, what did we speak about 2 weeks ago? Our conversation flowed. I think we I don't know how long we spoke, but it was fascinating because it was just one of those where I asked some questions and we just started going back and forth. And I think we both settled on, well, let's not plan anything. Let's just have a conversation. And that's perfect. So let's start where I normally start with everybody. And that is, what's the last song you listened to?
Well, it's going to be The Pretender by Jackson Browne.
Okay. All right.
This is a song that it just plays very commonly throughout my house. My dad used to listen to it all the time, and it's just a calming song for me. So that's probably the last listen to about it. Put my money on it.
So, and you mentioned dad. So where did you grow up, and what was childhood life like for you?
Well, I grew up right here in the state of Phoenix, or the city of Phoenix, state of Arizona. I'm actually a Chandler native. Okay. So Chandler, when I grew up, was a small cotton town just hovering outside this developing city called Phoenix, right? And then Phoenix, Tempe, Scottsdale, Mesa, they all just started chunking, and Gilbert, and now we're just this massive metropolis, right? And my little cotton town is stitched together with city streets now. So it's just been this big thing that's organized, and I've watched this massive city grow up around me. And my dad and I, we own a carpet cleaning business together. We've been doing that for 20 years. So, I grew up very close to my father. I spent a lot of time with him from around the age of 10 when he started the business. My weekends and summer breaks were filled, growing this business with my dad. So I spent a lot of time with my father growing up. I still do. I still work for him.
And so born, raised, graduated school in the Phoenix area. How do you find your way to the fire service, and why the fire service for you? What was the attraction for you to get into the fire service?
I'm glad you asked. It is a funny story. I was pursuing a neuroscience degree. I've always been fascinated with the brain. I've always been fascinated with human consciousness, human awareness. And that's where I was headed throughout all my high school and, college, hopeful. And then I took a CPR and first aid class at a community college here, Mesa Community College. And there was a Tempe firefighter. And I always say the tragedy of it is I can't remember her name, but she was just the coolest person. She was just the most know-how person I've ever met. She was the most lickety-split. She was the most helpful. Something about her just drew me in, and she completely derailed my career. I just said there has to be something about the career that makes that kind of person. And so I fully abandoned everything I thought I would do and became a firefighter. I think meditation and mindfulness has been a way for me to enjoy a first person study of the mind throughout the years. But that's really that's the answer. I met this woman, and she fascinated me.
So you joined the fire service, and do you search out mindfulness, or do you search first? Excuse me, because I know it wasn't mindfulness when you first found it. It was meditation when you first found it. It was that typical meditation. And do you search that out as a reaction to the job, or why do you go searching for that?
I appreciate that. I've always been kind of a deep person, right? I've always been somebody that wants to know more about what is and why is, those questions always were more interesting to me than like answers. I've always been more of a question seeker than an answer seeker, and that's just been kind of my hobby throughout my life. And I think mindfulness is just the space, meditation, I should say, is just a place where people go to ask questions more than they do to seek answers. And, with that enterprise comes a lot of, like I was saying earlier, a little bit of religious dogmatism, things you have to, kind of wade through if you're going to get into it. And, mindfulness is a much older practice than my experience, but it was still 10 years ago, it was much more diminished. It's kind of growing in size because it's fascinating how it helps. But mindfulness is definitely a much easier pathway than seeking, you know, Buddhism or Hinduism meditation to try to get at these concepts through, you know, different types of practices than just, you know, the scientifically defensible ones that we try to teach in mindfulness settings. So,
Well, I think you and I talked about that the last time we spoke, is we talked about how it would be trying to convince first responders to embrace a practice that involves Buddhism or Hinduism or whatever it is. And I'm not discounting those religions specifically. I'm just saying in general, it's a little easier to digest when you come from the angle of mindfulness for the masses, I think.
correct. Yeah, no, I you know, that is one of the challenges is how to get, you know, type A, you know, if you want something out of the world, you have to go get after it. And we all know intuitively that is very true, right? But there is a sense, there is an importance of just sitting down, and you can actually achieve your end means in your life more if you find yourself in a state where you are less buffeted by distraction. And mindfulness practice will help you capture your attention to be able to focus your attention in the direction you want to focus it in life. You know, one of the things that, you know, if you go on my page, I have a few videos that try to get at some concept of what mindfulness can do for you. And I've watched over the years in my fire station, firefighters going from having conversation over coffee and jokes to everybody in the bunker seat, you know, just here on their phones, you know what I mean?
Right.
And they're
Yeah.
talking, right? And mindfulness is a way to get that back. You know, we all want to supposedly spend time together. We all want to supposedly enjoy each other's company. We know we want that, but we can't help but get our attention captured by our devices anymore because we aren't training it. We aren't training our attention. And mindfulness is no more than 10 minutes a day, you know, no more than 15 minutes a day. Do you need to sit and focus on, you know, the breath, sounds, you know, how you tend to respond to the emotions you might be feeling that day without reacting, without needing to react, and just learn this about yourself. It will help you train your attention to a degree that you don't find yourself so distracted by stimulus. You know what I mean?
If somebody came to you and said, define meditation, how do you define it? And how do you do that in such a manner that they respond with, now I need to look into that. It's something to draw them in as well.
Okay. So meditation, I'll choose to set that definition aside, and I'll
Okay.
choose to just define mindfulness, right?
Okay.
Because mindfulness is, again, something that's much more easy to grasp. Mindfulness is simply moment to moment awareness of what is arising prior to judging it, right?
Mhm.
So everything you and I have ever experienced in our lives is coming with some sort of ethical judgment by you and I,
Mhm.
whether we're aware of it or not, right? You know intuitively whether the air in the room that you are inhabiting is comfortable or not. Is it too hot or too cold? Well, I know it's got to be comfortable because you seem comfortable. Otherwise, you'd be trying to fix it. You know,
Right.
microphone's the right way, so it's good. And your hat's the right way, so it's good, you know. But at some point, one of us is going to get thirsty. And that thirst is going to draw our distraction in a way that's going to make us need to solve that. Mindfulness could teach you that that thirst isn't going to bother you, and you can just sit with the interview longer and longer and longer and not be distracted by whatever is captivating your attention, you know? And mindfulness is just a way of noticing how your experience is developing in each moment without responding in a way that you're identifying to it and needing to change the experience. Does that make sense?
It does. And I was going to equate my personal experience to it a little bit when I've dabbled in mindfulness. And I didn't know when I first started, I didn't know what the differences were, but then obviously through the years, I've come to recognize what mindfulness is. And like you said, it's that meditation absent the spirituality or the religion, not the spirituality necessarily, but the religion piece. And we can talk about spiritual versus religious as we go, because I think that's an important designation. But when I would sit there and I'd go, I got these thoughts, I've got this thought, I've got that thought. And I'm like, I'm not supposed to be thinking. And I kept beating myself up as I can't do meditation. I can't stop thinking. And then, I don't know, about 2 years ago, I had a guest and she's been on a few times. Her name is Christy. She's down in Florida. And she said, who cares if you're thinking? What the purpose is to acknowledge the thought and let it go and not have to pay attention to it as much. And she used the analogy of like a train station where the brain is a train station, and then the thoughts are the tracks that go out. And then you find yourself on a track. You got to come back to the station, is what she said. And then a light went off for me. I was like, I can do that.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. It's a good analogy. There are so many great analogies that can get at, thoughts and what they actually are. The way I've tried to pose it to responders is, thoughts are like a first responder arriving on scene, okay, without a unit, without a victim, and having never been dispatched at all. You're just on scene of every
Right.
next situation. We're just on scene of this podcast interview, right? And then we're just going to be on scene of whatever comes next to us. But nobody's dispatching us to these events. Everything is just happening around us, and we all tend to live our lives as if we are the authors of our thoughts, as if we are the authors of our lives. But life is just kind of coming at you in a way that you really aren't controlling.
Mhm.
And mindfulness is a space where you can go and really detect that once you get enough attention underneath you. And that's where some of that spirituality and some of that, what's the purpose and what's my role in life, that is where you can begin to have some of those deeper experiences that we all do want as people. But mindfulness practice really is just a simple way of training your attention and training your response to your impulses in a way that makes you more indelible to respond the way you want. But like you said, there's a whole spirituality concept that we can open up and get into once mindfulness practice develops individual, for sure.
And there's a very clear distinction between spirituality and religion, correct?
I think that distinction is growing more and more.
Okay.
As society moves forward in life, less and less people are drawn toward traditional religions, now whether or not, people find themselves in different religions or not, there is still a component of human nature where we want to feel connected. We do
Yes.
want to believe that our lives matter.
Yeah.
We want to believe that we have a purpose. We have something greater than ourselves that we're responsible for, that we can say we've done with our experience, right?
Right.
Or else what's it all for? And I really believe that mindfulness and meditation is a place where you can go experience all that through questions, though. You're not going to find answers here.
Right.
There are answers out there, whether or not they're true or not. Whether or not people will give you answers, whether or not they're true or not. And I think I've just always preferred a question to an answer when it comes to the spiritual domain. That's always filled me more. But that doesn't mean I'm against religion or for religion. I just think that mindfulness is a place where it doesn't have to be so religiously dogmatized anymore. And it is just a space where you can be spiritual, seek questions and seek how you're going to find your own answers through the process.
Well, it makes sense because if you look at data and studies, the largest section, the largest growth in religion is towards a non-belief or question. So either agnostic or atheist. And so that's where something like this mindfulness, where it isn't tied to a religion specifically, really does come in handy. That you can go, okay, you can still use this and not have to chant or om or whatever, because I know that's people's vision of meditation, correct? Is that you're sitting cross-legged and holding your fingers and thumb and chanting. That's the vision that people have. Okay, we'll go do this for hours on end.
It is, and that is going to start to change, I think, conversations like this one, talking to people who are now beginning to teach more mindfulness practices. The mindfulness practices that have been offered to me so far through work-related activities or just fire service-related or public have all just felt hollow to me.
Okay.
They just feel like hollow corporate. And I understand that. They're doing their best, okay? But I understand what it's like to be a first responder. And I really have a passion for mindfulness and meditation, mind you, the whole project. So I want firefighters, cops, dispatchers, and EMS to discover this practice and to give it a try. Everything I have out there is I haven't charged a dime for. I just want to build a community and see if our industry finds this practice valuable, finds this as a helpful way of coping through trauma, coping through and finding wellness and well-being, and maybe perhaps a deeper personal life. And if I feel like I'm very much interviewing for this position in the industry, and I just hope that I can provide something to it. That's all.
So saying that you're interviewing for this position in the industry, and you've got a product out there that you're going to want to grow, and you're going to want to get out to more people. And the only way you can do that is to prove yourself, right? Or to sell it, lack of a better word. How do you open that conversation with people about mindfulness? So you're working with a new crew and you're discussing mindfulness. How do you make that approachable to them when you first start talking about it?
I think in similar ways that it's kind of just been sprung on me over the years. What is the difference between how you're going to respond to a tone today, right, to Mrs. Jones's house for the third time today, right? For whatever reason on this shift, I'm happy to do it. But next shift, by the second call, I'm now frustrated with the situation. Now I can give myself a story and a narrative and reasons why that might be the case. But scientifically, the truth is, it's because of all these other processes going on in my system that I'm unaware of. I might be more hungry at this moment. I might have more expectations on my shoulders for this day than this day. I might just be in a better mood because my kid had a great basketball game the shift before. There are all these other reasons that are truly explaining my behavior. And whatever reason I'm guaranteed to give you is guaranteed to be false. It's just a single tile on the the mosaic that is the situation. And mindfulness can give you a real tool to experience that about yourself, to notice that there's something different about my experience than I tend to notice because I'm captivated by the distractions of my life, right? You had a gentleman on your podcast that was very wise on psychedelics. I listened to about 30 minutes of that discussion. He knew quite a bit about psychedelics. And in this space, I've heard psychedelics talked about the difference between psychedelics and meditation. Psychedelics are very much like strapping yourself to a rocket. Okay, something is going to happen.
Right? Something's guaranteed to happen.
Something's guaranteed to happen. You're going to notice something about your experience that is going to change where mindfulness meditation is like raising a sail. It's slow, it's deliberate, but you're going to go in the direction that you want to go in your practice. If you know what I mean? Psychedelics will get you somewhere. You just don't know where you're going to go. Could be a great experience, could be a bad experience. Something in the mind is going to open. Mindfulness meditation is a very clear, direct path to do that. That's somewhat the difference between the two.
When I hear that comparison, it raises the question in my head. Okay, so if you're going to do a psychedelic, if you're going to do mushrooms or LSD or MDMA or whatever it is for a therapeutic reason, you pay attention to setting, dosage, all of it, right? You map it out and you make it as I don't know, advantageous as possible to get the results you want. How do you do that with meditation? Do you have to map out this perfect spot where you can sit and you can have, is that the same thing with meditation?
Okay. So the thing about mindfulness, the thing about meditation is that it is a trainable skill. Okay. You aren't doing anything when you're being mindful, right? You are what is the difference between sitting down and thinking versus watching TV and thinking? There is no difference, right? Um, all we're trying to do during our mindfulness practice is train our attention to just keep coming back to the breath or keep coming back to the sounds. People get frustrated, like you said earlier, because I sit down, I try to meditate, and I can't stop thinking. That is exactly the point. And once you can sit and accept that after a few sessions, is when you can then begin to not be so frustrated by the frustration between you and coming back to the breath is itself its own hurdle that you have to get through. Don't be frustrated with the mind. Be somewhat kind to yourself. This is going to happen when you sit down to try to pay attention to the breath. Within 10 seconds, if you can successfully just pay attention to your breath for 10 seconds, you don't need my practice, right? You don't need it. Obviously, you got more going on than I do. But to be able to focus on your breath for more than one breath without being distracted by clothes or boredom or frustration or a thought, or that is hard to do. And mindfulness will eventually get you to a point where you can just continue to come back to whatever you're trying to focus on. And in doing that, you begin to open up spaces where you can have an experience, feel yourself responding to a call or situation that's been bothering you. Notice the arising of this reoccurring imagery in the mind of whatever horrifying call you had experienced or whatever stressful situations go on in your life. You can begin to detect the undercurrent of that anxiety and let that pass you, right? And you begin to train that anxiety passing. Or if you're struggling to sleep, you can begin to train yourself to let go of whatever's bothering you prior to getting sleepy, right? Mindfulness just opens up the door to be able to notice things arising in your experience and let them go without identifying and having to carry out the consequences of whatever's getting at you in the moment.
So what's step one?
Sit down.
Done. Seal.
Sit down. And step one would be simply just to give it a shot. It is to close your eyes. Eventually, there's no difference between closing our eyes and opening our eyes. There is no difference. And deeper practice will get us there. But to just simply close your eyes and to notice the breath. Try to notice anything new about the breath that you might otherwise not, okay? Do you feel it at the tip of the nose? Do you feel it in the chest? Do you feel it in the belly? Where do you feel it most? And just try to sit with that single sensation as long as you can until you notice you're wondering how lunch is going, or you're noticing the next shift you have to go, right? Or you're interrupted by life because tones drop, right? Yeah. And then just come back again. Mindfulness practice won't get us anywhere. It's very much like training in the gym, okay? You can go and exercise for 24 hours straight, and you're going to make very little progress in your overall physical health in 24 hours. But if you stitch 24 hours of exercise, 20 minutes at a time over the course of X, you're going to see that difference though. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, that difference will be indelible. So how you use the time is also, there is no reason to begin sitting mindfulness meditation for any more than 10 minutes at a time. You're only destined to get frustrated with the practice. You're only destined to get frustrated with the experience. Just begin adding it to your daily practice at some point and give it a go for a little while. But it is somewhat like starting a language. It is somewhat like starting an exercise routine. You have to commit to the practice and to the experience if you want to get anything out of it.
Yeah, I think you and I also spoke about the parts of the brain that are affected for first responders, or actually, excuse me, not just for first responders, but for trauma, people who have experienced trauma. And so there are very specific parts of the brain that are affected, and they're affected physically. And, in your experience, like you said, you're a person who wanted to study the brain, and I'm going to guess that you have a pretty good working knowledge of what the brain is.
I mean, I would say anybody living today that believes they have a good understanding of the brain will inevitably be embarrassed in 50 years by Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
no, it makes total sense.
It's very fertile ground for understanding. I mean, it's very strange tissue we're trying
Yes.
to understand, operated by very few chemicals,
Right.
So I don't have a degree. I just read a lot of books.
Well, and same thing. I mean, I've read books and I've had conversations about the brain, and I guess where I was getting with that statement was there's a lot of impulsivity that we gain via the trauma that we experience, and it has to do with the parts of the brain that are affected. And so, through mindfulness, are we calming those parts of the brain, or are we just learning to harness it?
Okay. I love the question. Okay. I would say, what is the mind's two fundamental roles for us as living beings? Okay. The mind has two primary jobs. Okay. To keep you safe and to keep you inherently dissatisfied with your experience. These are the two roles of the mind. All right. The mind wants you to be safe at all costs. So we live in a society where we're constantly subtly threatened by stress, right? But stress in the mind is processed in a similar way as constantly being under assault if you're a small village of people, okay? The mind doesn't have strong pathways for what it's like to be buffeted by constant emails and notifications and stress with our jobs and our careers versus fight or flight. We really don't, the mind doesn't have different modalities for those types of stress. It has a single modality, and it's just stress. And on the other part of the job's mind, the reason why none of us can truly find satisfaction in the world is why meditation was first discovered. There's a whole story in Buddhism is where meditation was discovered. I'm not a Buddhist, but it is where the practice was first discovered by people. And it just started with the basic question of, why am I still unhappy? I remember when I first got my very first check, my very first career firefighter check, I think it was $978, right?
Yeah.
And I was just like, I'm never going to have to worry about money again, ever, right? Like, this is amazing. And then 3 months later, it was like, this ain't enough,
Yeah.
We're constantly trying to achieve goals. Just to find, once we have the goal in hand and everybody's watching us hold our goal, it starts evaporating as quickly as we achieved it.
Yeah.
And we're on to the next experience, right? That is the central tenet of what the spirituality of mindfulness can get us to, is to realize that despite all of our efforts, we're going to be unsatisfied with our experience. There has to be something here in this moment, in this interview, that's worth being happy over. There has to be. Otherwise, what is the point?
Right.
And you will discover in your mindfulness practice, there really is an overall sense of well-being. There really are no problems when you're mindfully aware of how nice it is just to take the next breath. When you're mindfully aware of just how nice it is to have the sun on your skin. How could a coffee or how could anything improve this experience, right? The way I've tried to explain to my crew as a joke is, if you can enjoy being bored, you can enjoy anything more. It's kind
of, no, you're right.
So when I first got into mindfulness and they were like, what are you doing meditating in your bunk room? I'm like, hey, I found a way to just sit for an hour and be bored. Watching a movie is going to be 10 times more fun. Right. That's the way I first started explaining it.
Right.
And I think it gets at it from a very backwards way. If once you do harness an ability to sit for 10 minutes and find deep meaning in that, spending time with your kids playing basketball or, all that, you can have all that fun come on board even and enjoy that even more. Does that make sense?
It does. And I guess I never realized that, you said, what are the purpose of the mind? Two things: keep you safe and keep you dissatisfied. And that statement right there, that keep you dissatisfied, is for some people, it might be groundbreaking to hear, because we had the old adage, well, life is a journey. It's not a destination. And that's what you're saying. You're always chasing something. And once you get it, and I think the dopamine comes from the chase, not the not the catch.
Mm-hmm.
Once
Or
you
even,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, please
I was
finish
going to
your
say,
thought.
once you get that catch, you lose that dopamine, and there's kind of a disappointment in the catch itself.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, there is, and it's not that it's disappointment. It's just that your mind starts going to work immediately again.
Yeah.
Your mind starts going to work as soon as you've gotten what you want, as soon as you have finally gotten to the burger stand that you've been wanting to get to satisfy your hunger.
Yeah.
And you take a bite of that. It can't help but notice it's too salty, and you now need to drink a Coke.
Yeah.
Right. And then you notice that the Coke has too much fizz, or it's not fizzy enough. And now that's irritating us, right? When really all we wanted was to satisfy this hunger.
Mm-hmm.
But now hunger isn't enough. Hunger's got to come with a certain expectation of satisfaction for it to be pleasurable to satisfy that hunger. Right.
Right.
And this is just the way of the mind. And there's no escaping it, but you can train it. And you can begin to realize that my mind is going to try to make me unhappy, and I'm not going to let it. There's a famous quote. Oh darn, I'm going to forget her name. I'd have to look it up. I'm going to forget her name. I have to look it up. But she goes, I can be changed by the things that happen to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. Right.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
That's such a mindful way of describing suffering. You know what I mean?
I thought it was it Maya Angelou who did it? Who said that?
Yeah, Maya Angelou. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
Look at that. I pulled it out. I like it.
It's a good host here, ladies and gentlemen. They just guessed. But, there's something, I don't believe Maya Angelou has anything to do with mindfulness meditation.
No.
But she does clearly have something to say about suffering there.
Yes.
She's obviously been through some experiences that have taught her that you can be reduced by the things that happen to you, or you can allow them to change you,
right?
Because they're going to change you anyway, and that's something mindfulness really does. Change is going to happen, and we all hate change. We all resist change, but your life is changing moment to moment, second to second. Your listeners are currently downloading some form of knowledge, whether they're thinking this is all a bunch of bullcorn and I can't wait till this episode's over, or they're downloading information that says maybe this conversation is something to work with.
Right.
Everyone's being changed by this conversation just by giving it their attention. And some of your listeners right now are diligently trying to listen to what we're saying, but they're being distracted by whatever they're actually doing, checking off their EMS equipment,
right,
or whether or not they're making some food, and they're trying to listen. They're having to rewind because they can't control their awareness enough to pay attention. We all know what that's like. Mindfulness can just help us in all these little domains, and it's a trainable skill. I mean, you are the sole recipient of the training you give your mind. If you want to understand your mind, you have to sit down to observe it. You can't let anyone else explain to you your own experience, but you can't understand your own experience if you're constantly distracting yourself with things to prevent you from understanding yourself. Does this make sense?
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. It doesn't mean it makes it easy.
No, it is a very simple practice. It is not to say it's an easy one.
Right.
It is a battleground every day of the mind, and even your most diligent meditators who sit in caves for 20, they obviously are not done with the project for some reason,
right.
But that doesn't mean, there's nothing about your mindfulness practice that needs you to meditate 2, 3, 4 hours a day to get anywhere, right? Nobody in the fire service or police force needs to be Arnold Schwarzenegger to do our jobs, but a healthy level of physical fitness does train the heart to be able to do our jobs and has systemic effects for preventable diseases.
Yeah.
I fully believe that we need to be training our young recruits to sit down on a cushion for 10 minutes a day and notice what your experience is like, to train that mind. If we start doing it early, when they built the habit and they do have an experience where they just watch somebody take their last breaths, and then they come into their mindfulness practice a day and a half later, whenever they decide to sit, because it is part of their lives, they might be asked to focus on the breath. And just that alone might make that session of traumatic session for them. And I understand that every session can be a difficult one if we're starting with things like the breath, if we're starting with things that we as public servants have to cope with, have to see, have to deal with. Every meditation session can come with a wave of emotional experience that you are going to have to notice, come back from, and just repeat this process of coming back down from stimulus and just being with whatever your experience is. This is the practice, and we can diligently prevent these mental illnesses from our recruits and for ourselves if we learn how to train the mind. And I do believe that as an industry, we're going to be somewhat embarrassed someday that this has been under our noses this entire time and we've missed it.
I think that as an industry, we're going to be slightly embarrassed about a lot of things that have been under our noses and we missed it, or we willfully ignored it.
True. I was talking to an individual the other day that asked me if I'm frustrated with some of my fire chiefs in the industry for not, doing more about mental illness. And I don't think I am. I don't think I am. Our industry has done an obviously amazing job of taking young men and women to go into situations that are scary and terrifying to do the right thing for their neighbors. Now, the best way of doing this for the longest time was push away anything that makes you feel weak and do it. That's the only way. And it worked. It worked today. It works now. It gets results, right? But 10, 20 years later, it's not helping us. It's deranging us further, actually. And I think now is just the time to begin to say, look, we have the tools. We do. And it's time to start experimenting with some of these things. Mindfulness practice is just a very simple place to start with your own experience and with training the mind. It's been here all along. And, I don't think that there's any hostility toward any of our forefathers or anybody that's trained us to be what we are today. Not at all. I just believe this is just our industry getting better for ourselves. Podcasts like yours, conversation about what we're all experiencing on the ground, the ability to connect with one another, to do things like this. This has all been very good, right? This is good for us on the boots on the ground. We might not need our industries, our taxpayers to help us with training. We can do it ourselves through platforms like this.
Hey guys, quick break right here just to check in and thank each of you for listening to the show. Your support has been paramount, and I appreciate all of you. I have one request, though. I need you to share the show with everyone you know. Help me get the word out and spread these stories as far and as wide as we can. While you're at it, please leave a review of the show wherever you happen to listen. Feel free to reach out to me at any time to share your story, to talk, or to pass on suggestions. Let's get on with the rest of the show.
So then that begs the question, what are you offering as a service right now? What is out there? What programs have you put out there, and how can people find it?
Well, everything I've produced so far is on YouTube. And there's no paywall. I haven't charged a dime to anything. I do as a hopeful, I would like to build a paywall for those that want a deeper practice and a deeper experience. I am anti-AI when it comes to writing. I do not believe as a mindfulness instructor to use AI to write.
Right.
It is to fundamentally miss the essence of the mind. If you need a computer to help train, you're doing it wrong. So,
right.
Everything I write and produce is mine. I use AI to kind of help me paint the illustrations because I'm not an artistic person. But it's all on YouTube. I have Facebook, Instagram, and I would like to eventually build a paywall where I can go deeper and ask better questions and produce a daily practice for my audience and everything. But right now you can find everything on YouTube, Facebook. So.
And you said you're doing it for not just a first responder. You've got one for children and spouses, correct?
That's correct. I have two young boys, an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old. And unfortunately for my children, they were born into a household of somebody who likes to sit down with his eyes closed. I've tried, every night we sit down for about 5 minutes as a family and do a mindfulness practice. And the the resources for kids out there are they're a little tough. Okay. There are some great ones. I've been very lucky at experimenting and finding stuff, resources on YouTube, but my kids are just older and they have a first responder parent and they just need more. If you're going to have a mindfulness practice, Foundation Fortified is committed to supporters of responders as well. So I've got 2 out there right now for supporters. One's called Loneliness for supporters, and the other one is called Young Supporters, Be Safe and Good Luck, or Good Luck and Be Safe. So it's a short one for young kids.
So with the programs you have specifically for the first responders, is it a chronological thing, or is it just something you can go, I'm going to do this a couple of times, or explain that one to me a little bit?
So Foundation Fortified so far I've had a curriculum that I've had written for 4 or 5 years. I just haven't had the time. Where's the time as a first responder, right?
Yeah.
But I recently suffered an injury at work, which has given me the time to get my education and create this platform. So far, Foundation Fortified is a collection of lifestyle videos where I try to blend mindfulness practice with your life as a responder or just life as a human being. There's a section for guided meditations, and within that framework, there are some that are specific for first responders. First Day Cell, Ticket Booth is a great one. I produced a couple other recently. Pretty soon, I'm going to come out with one that I call my Critical Incident Mindfulness Debriefing. Okay. So this is going to be a meditation that is for responders to hit play on the worst call of their lives, right? We all do a critical incident stress debriefing, which is a great skill that we've picked up over the last 20 years. But some of us come to find out are uncomfortable in those situations, right? Talking about the call amongst their peers is yet itself another difficult situation. And that is okay. We're all different. Critical incident mindfulness debriefing is somewhere where you can go to experience your thoughts, feelings, and emotions about the call by yourself in your own mindfulness practice. So I'm be coming out with that one. But what I would like to do at some point is have a daily practice for first responders,
right?
Where you can go every day and have a week's collection there where you can just hit play and do your daily practice. And that's at some point where I'm going to get behind the paywall and be able to focus on my attention, because right now it's just a collection of different things where first responders can go to see what I have to offer and see if mindfulness practice, whether it's being taught by me or something they want to go find for themselves, is a place where you can start as a first responder, wherever the route you decide to go with your mindfulness practice is.
And how long does it normally take you to get one of these together and produced and put out there?
Well, like I said, I've been fortunate because as I've done my own mindfulness meditation practice, ideas have come to me over the years, and I've sat down, I've written them out, I've played with them, I've toyed with them, and I have a whole curriculum that's just sitting in a binder. So it's been easy since I've been injured to pull my old data for myself and then produce it. And like I said, we're living in a time in AI where I can produce my meditation and then easily just ask a computer to build me an image to attach to it to give, somewhat of a theme, somewhat of a story to what I'm saying in my piece there. But, so far it's just all kind of been stitched together. It's right there. It doesn't take me too long, but there will come a time where the well dries up and the Foundation Fortified is going to be anything that can really produce mindfulness practice for people. I would like to have a daily practice for my followers. And so that is forthcoming, hopefully soon.
And if you had to pick one of those episodes that you would put out there as start here, which one would it be?
I'm going to give you 2.
Okay.
I would say Ticket Booth. I mentioned that one earlier. Ticket Booth is a great one to just start because I'm not asking you to do much, but follow a narrative.
Okay.
I'm basically your storyteller in that one. Mindfulness practice is not often helpful to have somebody constantly telling you what you should be thinking about or imagining. But that one's an important one for first responders, even though that is the product there. And the other one I would suggest is First Day Self. Okay. This is one that you can go to try to relate to yourself in a much different way than you ever thought possible in hopefully just a quick 8-minute session. So those are the two I would suggest starting.
And this is going to sound silly, but do you mind if I share that and kind of push that out through my platform as well?
No, please do. Like I said, anyone, I am just trying to help as many first responders as I can so far. I've been up and in for about 90 days and I've produced about 27 pieces, I believe. And I just want to spread it out there to the entire first responder industry to see if it's something that they find valuable, So by all means, any of your listeners, if any of my pieces did something for you, please share it. Please share it along. Like I said, so far I'm making no royalties on any of it.
Did I miss anything about your mindfulness practice that we need to talk about that you feel needs to be out there kind of to as more encouragement, maybe?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
So I just want to make sure that I'll edit this because that was clunky as hell, and I apologize. Basically, is there anything else that you want to add that maybe I didn't bring up in the conversation?
No. Like I said, my mindfulness practice is different than anything else you might have seen, in the history of meditating. I remember when I was a young kid, I was in a record, if you can imagine such a thing, a record store with my dad. And I remember a CD and it had a Buddhist monk who was half on fire,
Right.
And I remember being a kid and like, why isn't he screaming? Like, what is going on? And that always stuck with me. And that image turned me off of the project for a long time, and that was unfortunate. You know what I mean?
Right.
But our culture, our society it has completely shut the lights down to meditation, mindfulness. And I think it's just time to turn the lights on, maybe with a dim switch, you know what I mean? And just give it a shot for the first time. It is a private skill that you're training. No one, I often say that mindfulness is a gift to the people you love as well.
Right.
I mean, you're attempting to be a better husband, a better father, a better wife, or a better responder, a community servant. You're attempting to do something with your mind that is improving your experience. Otherwise, we're just bouncing around letting life change us.
Right.
Right? I mean, whether your supervisor gives you the promotion that you worked so hard for or not, that is going to change you to the degree that you let it without mindfulness practice. Mindfulness practice is going to allow you to take that stimulus from the day at some point and go sit with it by yourself in the privacy of your mind through some guided interaction with hopefully a meditation, instructor. But eventually you won't need me. Eventually, you're training me out of you won't need me at some point, we're just trying to train this skill. And then once you do it, whether or not you hire a physical trainer for the rest of your, physical fitness career or not is up to you. Right. I'm just hoping to be able to get this skill out there for individuals. And if they like doing my meditations, they can continue. But this is just something that I'm hoping to advocate for us in our industry. And if I'm lucky to pick up some people that enjoy what I have to say on behalf of it along the way, that'd be great. That'd be great.
I guess I also have a question about leadership. You're a fire captain. You've been in that position for 5 years, and that's a pressure position. I mean, you've got. Listen, we all depend on each other in our lives in these jobs, right? But you have a special bit of pressure on you because you are the boss. You are in charge of that crew and that rig. How has meditation helped you specifically as a fire captain, as a leader in the fire service?
Oh man, I feel like if you want something controversial, you're going to get it here in this next. I not to diminish the men that I alongside my career, but I think overall our leaders are just weaker than they used to be, and I think it's for one reason. I don't think we as men are any weaker than the men that came before us, fundamentally. I just believe they were better with their attention.
Yeah.
If we're honest about the screen time notifications that we tend to ignore, what are you doing with your attention? You're spending 4 hours a day captivated by social media, TikTok, and don't get me wrong, my platform's on these things, to try to get people to see what I'm saying. Take a pause here. Just try this instead. Come here and spend 10 minutes here, and then decide how much you want to video scroll your life away. And what makes a good leader these days is someone that has a diligent ability to hone his own attention. I think our leaders don't pay enough attention to the guys around them, to the people that they're in charge of, to their own lives and situations. We're too busy focusing on whatever's streaming through us on our devices, and I think if you want to be a better leader today, now more than ever, all you need to do is have better diligent capture of your own attention.
Yeah, I think when you mentioned at the beginning that sitting around the table and everybody's on their phones or whatever, and in the first image I had was, it's not just the bucket firefighter it's everybody. It's from the battalion chief on down. If the battalion chief's sitting at your table, or the captain on down, it's everybody is preoccupied. And you take a look around, you're like, where'd the conversation go?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And granted, there's a place and time for escapism, but there's also a place and time to engage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, it's no secret at this point that when cell phones were, and as they've been developed, they've been very strategically developed to be as exciting and as slot machine-like and as interactive as possible, because you are the product. Your attention is the product. And as we become more mindfully aware of this as a problem, it doesn't mean that getting rid of this problem is going to be easy in your personal life. We can allow these companies to finally become more ethical and become more diligent about what they're doing to our society as we start fighting and not trusting anybody, and everybody thinks they're their own doctor, and everybody thinks they can be their own firefighter or cop. And, we can wait for those companies to get their act together so that the product we're giving them is better, or we can just pick ourselves up by our own bootstraps and realize that life is passing me by, and I want to be a more diligent control. I want to enjoy my life better. I want to look at my kids growing up. I want to actually enjoy playing with my children. I mean, what happened to that? What happened to actually enjoying your experience? Well, 4 hours a day, 3 hours a day, we're looking at other people's experience, wanting something more. And that is how you're training your mind in the current age.
I mean,
I'm not asking you to stop doing all of that. I'm simply saying, if you give it 10 minutes a day, just sit on a cushion, maybe your screen time will go from 2-3 hours a day, maybe to 45 minutes a day. You spend 10 minutes meditating, that's an hour of your day, and you gain 2 of it back, because you just aren't captivated anymore by that kind of stimulus. It's not as interesting to you.
It goes back to what you said too about what the mind's job is, and one of those jobs was to be dissatisfied with life, right? And then we add in doom scrolling through TikTok and Instagram, and you're exponentially making that dissatisfaction larger.
Right. I mean, if it really has escaped our attention that back in 2016 and 2020 and 2021, 2022, things have forever changed, but here we are, and we have more problems we're facing, and we're going to get through those to some degree. And, we're doing the job of what life here on planet Earth is. We were just born in this time with these set of problems, but it's no different than, history books are written about all the battles that were won and fought, but nobody really knows what it was like to be a 23-year-old farmer for England and to be told you're going to march now 200 miles with steel and, then go fight a war and leave everything behind that you've ever known or felt or believed. And the women are now picking up the work, and, those were real lives. Those were real people that had real experiences. Meanwhile, I'm just unhappy because, oh man, the coffee I just purchased for $7 has too much ice in it, and you know what I mean? It's like we just life is just different now. We don't have the same stressors, but they are different. But we have the same minds. And it is these minds made of meat, made of tissue, that are responding to our life and our world as if we were still marching for England or still living on the Savannah Desert, trying to find our next food while not being the food of some other creature, right? Our minds are essentially the same.
Yeah.
Our lives are just radically different. And mindfulness is just a great place to start to discover how your mind tends to respond and who it tends to make you. You know, if you don't want to be mad over an email for more than 5 minutes, if you want an email to derange your afternoon because so-and-so shouldn't have said that about you, or so-and-so is embarrassed, you know, go ahead if that's the life you want to continue living, you know, but you know, it really is a superpower in this world to be able to see the half-life of any given emotion evaporate in your hands in the same way your achievements do. You know, I can be the victim of this anger. I don't have to be this anger. I don't enjoy being angry any longer than I have to be.
Yeah. Nobody enjoys that.
But we all do it. We all are as angry as we can be about the stimulus until it goes away on its own for whatever reason, because it's solved or because something else distracted us and put us in a better mood or whatever it is. Or you can just notice this anger come on. It could be placarded onto your experience.
Right.
And just watch it fade. And now you're just left with whatever problem you got to deal with.
You know, and you talked about taking mindfulness into recruit schools, and then you said the things that have happened in the past few years, and it immediately clicks in my head that, holy shit, we're really going to need that, because we have people coming into recruit school as 18 or 20-year-olds right now whose formative years through middle school and high school were spent during the COVID time, where that social interaction was taken from them because we weren't allowed to gather in person. And so they learned how to communicate and interact via the phone or via whatever. And it was an electronic, internet connection. And that personal connection was missing, and it still is, because they learned to live life 12, 15 seconds at a time.
You know, it shouldn't escape our attention that, you know, throughout the ages, I don't know if you've noticed, but typically the generation ahead of you is far less interested in the things that you are than you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my dad and his didn't really care for video games, but I was kind of into them, right? But nobody's playing kick the can anymore. You know, that's just moved on from that, right? Everybody just moves on. But cell phones exist in a different way. I mean, my battalion chiefs and my fire chiefs are just as captivated by their phones as the 18-year-old that has grown up. Now, who stands a better chance at being able to control their attention, being able to control this device? Probably the elder statesman who lives 40%, probably 60% or more of his life without a cell phone, in only the last 15 years with one, but still can't catch it, you know?
Yeah.
We've got to start training our first responders to pay attention to their minds. You know, a lot of first responder training, in my view, is about removing the self, right? Or were you not scared to run into a burning building the first time for a brief moment? You know, were you not scared to put the mask over your face for the first half a second, right? But what we're doing when we're training our police officers to go in and have courage, and what we're doing to train our police officers to be able to go fight crime on an empty stomach or sleep deprived, right? We are training normal human beings who wants to improve the lives of their neighbors to be less self-afflicted when there's an emergency going on. Mm-hmm. Or am I missing the entire project of what first responding is? It is just removing your worst impulses when an emergency is going on to be able to affect the change in the order that it needs to be affected in, to maximize the lack of poor outcome, right?
Right.
Or maximize poor outcomes not coming on. Well, mindfulness is just the same exact project, removing the self from your situation to notice how you should respond, to notice how you might respond. You're just removing bad impulses, bad data from the mind to really experience what it's like to respond.
That makes total sense.
I mean, it's like I said, there is some training within us as first responders that lends itself very well to mindfulness practice. I mean, it took me a while to understand what a mindfulness instructor or what a contemplative meant when they said, try to become aware of whatever. Well, what do you mean by aware, you know?
Yeah.
And then I related back to my situational awareness I had been training since I was 18.
Right.
What is it like to be situationally aware of a high stress, high risk situation? I don't know what Spidey sense would be like if I was Spider-Man, but there's something there that trains over time, a window of the mind that allows you as an officer, which is why we promote officers to have that situational awareness, right? And once you can apply that to awareness and mindfulness practice, all of a sudden, just sitting down and paying attention to your breath is a much different experience than it tends to be. You know, we have certain intuitions as first responders that lend itself, but our traumatic experiences, not only can our mindfulness practice help us cope with those, but they are a hurdle for us as responders in our mindfulness practice that we have to understand and be prepared for.
Yes, I love that analogy. I mean, you're right. It's we train ourselves to not do away with self. Well, actually, in a way, we do. We train ourselves to do away with self because it's not about self.
Correct.
And that I like that comparison between the mindfulness and that training. That's fascinating.
I appreciate it. Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, you know, mindfulness is a great space to experiment. It's a great place to go to discover more about your own life, your own attention, get some things back that you haven't even noticed you've lost. But yeah, training your attention, there is a project when you first begin mindfully meditating. And that is just to train this attention that you don't know that you don't have.
Right.
And once you've trained that with a sufficient level, you know, I always go back to physical fitness, right? You really can't begin to physically train until you've trained your body to understand the stress that it has to go through to train, right? When you first begin exercising, couple push-ups, couple air squats, you know, maybe a jog or two, and you're racked for almost the rest of the day and maybe the week.
Right.
But you just train the body for the first couple, you know, month or so, 2 months, 3 months, maybe even half a year, depending on what kind of shape you're getting in or what kind of, you know, what you're walking in with. And then once the body is trained to be able to take on stress, now it can be pushed. Now it can be pushed to really make headway, right? And that's the thing that first responders just have to understand about sitting mindfully is there is going to be this period where you just feel like I'm wasting my time because you can't see the results in the mind like you can see the results in your arms or you can see the results on your chest. But you will begin to see, I'm stuck in traffic and I'm not as mad about this. Where's the anger in this call? Why am I not frustrated? You will begin to see that and you'll begin to feel it indelible in how you tend. This used to be upsetting to me, but it just isn't now. In fact, I kind of like this song and I'm stuck in traffic. I'm just going to enjoy the song, you know, and you know, the little experiences like that make mindfulness practice a very powerful motivator to want to go back. But you do have to get there. You do have to get there.
So when's the last time you experienced a moment of awe?
You know, honestly, I can almost experience one on command, you know, when I want, you know, there's essentially nothing about this experience that is going to be any better than adding a beach towel, spending $1,000 and finding myself wherever I want on planet Earth with the people that I care about. I can do that and have a great experience. And that's why we all kill ourselves to get there, right? But there's so much going on right now. You know, if I pay close enough attention, I don't even know how I'm going to get to the end of the sentence.
And
I mean, the next time you begin replying to me, I just want you, just pay close attention to the words coming out of your mouth and ask yourself, how is this sentence going to find its terminal end? And I don't even know the words that it's going to take to get there. And that is an interesting thing to inspect once you have the attention to do so. And another simple exercise if you want to have a 1% enlightenment experience, if you want to have an experience about your life that will blow your mind if only for a few moments, the next time you're eating, just be mindfully aware of what your tongue is up to. Be interested in nothing else but what your tongue is doing in your mouth as you chew whatever you're chewing. It's a fascinatingly busy creature that does so much for us. It cleans our teeth and moves the food around.
Right.
It allows us to talk. It allows us to breathe, all effortlessly controlled by who knows what and who knows who.
Right.
But here it is all along doing everything it's doing for us. And it really can be a very interesting experience just to pay attention to your tongue.
Well, I know what dinner's going to be like tonight, so thanks for that. It's going to take me an hour to get through my food now.
Yeah, you might slow. Just don't bite your tongue.
Yeah, right.
You want to change that experience real fast. You bite your tongue, and then you all of a sudden seem to be controlling it every minute.
Yeah. So, what about a book? Do you have a book suggestion for the audience?
I do. There are many that I would suggest, but the one that had a very powerful impact on me was *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari.
I have not heard of it.
He's a world historian. He's from Israel, and he's very interested in ancient human development to our current age. So he'll go through the different ages of man. The agricultural age and all these different time periods. And he just kind of paints this overall picture of what humanity is, not who we are, not what we are, but what we have done to become the species on this planet that we are today. And it was just a really interesting tie-in to feel yourself descended through this massive story of human culture.
I just looked it up. I'm gonna put that on my list because that sounds fascinating to me. That's exactly the stuff I'm looking for. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right. I just looked it up, and I'm gonna put that on my list because that sounds fascinating to me. It's exactly the kind of thing I like to read.
It's a dense looking book, but it really is just an absolute page turner, and I just couldn't put it down. I just couldn't put.
I just finished reading Annie Jacobson's Nuclear War, and it's a scenario-based book, and it's devastating to read. It will scare the shit out of you by reading it. And then I quickly followed it up with The Road by Cormac McCarthy, and I'm like, I gotta get something lighter. There's too much death and destruction in these books, so I'll look for something like that.
Do you find yourself in fiction or nonfiction circles?
I prefer to do one of each at the same time.
Okay, yeah.
I kind of balance out the brain candy with the info and vice versa.
I understand. Yeah, I've always been just buffeted by nonfiction after nonfiction.
Right.
I can never. I'm envious of people who read fiction books because. I tell my boys all the time, I'm like, books are the one place you can still go to be a different person with different problems and experience common situations through different eyes,
Yes.
And the best part about a book is you can pick up this new life that you have to understand and you can put it down and go back, very similar to mindfulness, right? Go experience something different and be able to walk away and go do your actual situation. But, I've never been able to. No fiction's ever been weirder than reality, in my opinion.
Well, you're not lying there.
Yeah, so I always find myself reading nonfiction books.
Well, listen, sir, I appreciate the conversation. Thanks for taking a couple hours on a Sunday to talk to me.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being a guest on your show, sir.
And I will let you know when this one's coming out. I'm gonna put some information out tomorrow or Tuesday about our conversation and kind of point people to your website.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Darrell. You're in.
Awesome, man. Go enjoy the rest of your Sunday, dude.
You too, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to another episode of The Things We All Carry. Head over to the website, thethingsweallcarry.com for show notes, resources, and to sign up for the newsletter. Until next week, take care of yourselves and remember to check in on each other.